All right, guys. So, before we dive into the setup, you may find that some of the things we are about to do may venture into areas that you're unaware of when working with a computer. Some of you may be more powerful users, and some of you may just be new to all of this. And we want to give you a solid foundation on which you can build. So we want to show you things that you may not have seen before. And depending on what type of system you run, you may find that there are just certain features that have eluded you throughout your usage. You may be a powerful Excel user, you may be a powerful PowerPoint user, but there are just certain things to a computer that you haven't been in touch with yet. So when we're doing SQL and Postgres, and over here you can see I'm on my Mac. Well, certain systems use Unix or Linux or Mac. These are types of operating systems. And Mac is very close to Linux. And then you have people that use this completely different paradigm. The majority of you may be Windows users. But what all of these computers have in common is that they use bits and bytes. And so there are ways in which you can communicate with your computer that you may not be used to. And before we get into setting up all of this that you see here, well, first we have to get into the setup of our databases. And Postgres particularly is an interesting technology that you're learning. Because although you have all of these tools to show you things visually, a lot of people like to run Postgres in the command line. Now you may be frowning and saying, like, command line? What's the command line? Well, this tool may have eluded you throughout your PC usage or your Mac usage or your Linux usage. Not so much for the Linux users. If you're in the Linux space, if you're using Ubuntu, you've probably found your way around the terminal. But basically, there is this thing called a terminal. And on Windows, it'll be called the command line. And so what that looks like is the following. It's a textual interface. So when you open it up, it may look like this. It may look a bit smaller. It may open up in a frame about this size. But depending on how you use it, and depending on if you're familiar with it, it'll just open up in a basic way. And what it allows you to do is it allows you to interface with your computer from a text perspective. Now, there are multiple commands that you can run in command line. And we'll reference some material that will help you supercharge your adventure down the command line route. But some of the most important ones that we'll be using are ls, which is list directory. You can also do ls-a, which will show you the directory and the hidden files that you normally can't see when you browse your system. There is change directory, which is cd, change directory. And if we go into databases, well, if we do ls there, now we have a completely different file structure. And so this mimics us going into documents and seeing what's here. As you can see here, we're seeing databases and databases.zip. And then when we're inside of databases, we can see France, employee, but we see these files here, icon question mark, DS store, files that we can't see when we're in our Finder. And so that's what's cool about using command line. It doesn't only look like a matrix hacking sequence. It's actually very functional when you start using it, when you're programming and doing SQL and doing other things. And when we pop over into Windows, you can equally use the same in command line where you do ls. Whoa, that doesn't seem to work. Well, how do we do that in Windows? Well, in Windows, the command is actually dir, and that'll show you the directory, dir. And to change directory, it's the same thing. So we can do cd desktop, and then if we do dir in here, you can see what all is in the desktop. So you can see over here, we have backup.sql right over here. And then we have 2 directories and 1 file. All right. So with this, you have the power as a user to interface with your computer in a different way. And again, we'll be linking materials to push you along a journey to use command prompt wisely and successfully. But with this introduction, you have a solid foundation to know what we're talking about when we start doing things like importing our databases into Postgres and other things that we can do along the line. We will also include a section on specifically interfacing with Postgres and command line when we go into talks about how to maintain your database. So stay tuned for all of those.